everybody, we're back. Brand new Cabral Concept, big show here today. Another follow-up on cellulite, lipedema, and lymphedema. So after we put out the last show, there was a lot of questions still from our community. And I want to make sure that I tackle all of those today so that you truly understand if you have dimpling on your thighs or triceps or stomach or whatever it might be, you know if it's actually a medical-based condition or if it's really cellulite and you're being told by influencers online that it's something really worse than it is. And again, I'm not saying that you don't want to get rid of your cellulite, and we can absolutely help you to do that. I have lots of free podcasts on it. I'll link them up here today at stevencabral.com/3540. But so many people here today are being told that what they have is not what they have. And so you're now looking at, again, I'm getting emails and questions from people all over the world asking, should I go to this clinic in Europe that deals with this specific, lipedema or lymphedema? Well, let's talk about that because the answer is most likely no in 90 plus cases. And so let's dive into it today. I will link up episode, 3511, stevencabral.com/3511 should be the next show you check out if you missed that one. But what I want to do is dive in here today. So there is essentially three phases. There's cellulite, there's lipedema, and then there's lymphedema. And so you at the end of today's show, you will know exactly what all of this is. Cellulite is probably the most known and most recognized, the most thought about. I like to talk about cellulite like this. Think about like a mesh net, right? A mesh lining, a mesh net, and think about covering water balloons. If you press on those water balloons with a mesh net, what happens? Well, the water starts to push through. The little water balloons start to push through the netting and you can see little dimples. That is exactly what's happening with cellulite. So essentially you've got your fascia, you've got adipose tissue, or we'll call it subcutaneous adipose tissue because that's what it is. And those actually look like bubbles. And then below that, you've got your muscle as well. So typically, you've got fascia that actually surrounds the muscles as well. You've got a layer above the fat, and the fat can be a layer above the muscle. And that's why as you lose weight and lose body fat, you start to see more muscle tone, even though the muscle tone has always been there, right? So that's how a lot of this works. Well, with cellulite, there's a number of factors. There's toxicity, there's inflammation, there's hormone imbalance, and all of those are correctable. Truthfully, they are correctable. And you also want to do exercise and foam rolling and other things along with them. So there's all of those fixes I've talked about on the podcast. And that's why I'm going to link it up today at stevencabral.com/3540. I'll link up these shows. But a lot of women, some men, but a lot of women are being told that they have lipedema or they have lymphedema. I talked about lymphedema on last show. I just want to correct all of these specific things. Lipedema is basically the next level, but it's different because we're moving towards a real medical condition. So this is adipose tissue that has now become far more inflamed, and there is now a painfulness or tenderness to the fat. Let's just concentrate on the thighs here today. Most of the women and some men in my practice talk about cellulite, or now they're calling it lipedema. So or lipedema, however you like to pronounce it. So basically they're getting more dimpling on the front of their thighs. Maybe they still have some on their hips as well. Okay. So here's the thing with lipedema, it's typically more symmetrical, but it's not, it looks like cellulite, but it is inflamed. The legs feel heavy, not from weight. They feel like the blood is stuck there. It feels inflamed and it's painful to the touch. This is really important differentiation because we're now starting to have less fluid motility moving through the body, and we're starting to have drainage-based issues. With lipedema, there's often a line. So like, let's say that it's on the forearm or it's on the thigh, you will see the body fat accumulate, but not necessarily around the knee. And again, I know the knee is mainly your tendons, ligaments, etc., but there will be what's called a cuff sign. There'll be a stopping at the hip. There'll be a stopping at above the knee and also above the ankle. This is important because this is actually the differentiation than before lymphedema. So essentially what happens is the swelling of the fat tissue, again, which is now inflamed, it's painful, it can feel heavy. It is not, though, moving through the lymph, right? So it's stuck. That's the difference. With lymphedema, we now see the swollen feet and we see the swollen hands. Probably everyone has seen an individual where their ankles look like they're holding a lot of water, but the feet are still small. It literally looks like a cuff, like everything's stopped at the ankle. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's essentially lipedema. When it moves and now the whole foot is swollen and or hand is swollen, we call that now lymphedema. So my previous podcast was on that. That is a real medical condition. So lipedema is a medical condition. It should be looked at. Cellulite is not. That's cosmetic. And you can still work on that. And there are lots of great ways to help it. Okay. Lymphedema, though, is often asymmetrical as well. You'll see one ankle, one foot, one thigh larger than the other. That's an important biomarker to look at, not a biomarker, but physiological perspective on the body to look at. And the reason why is that there's a lymphatic issue. There's a drainage issue. Something with the motility of the fluid in the lymphatic system is no longer flowing properly, and that is dangerous. You could build up sepsis. You could build up all sorts of infections. There could be an infection, and that's the whole reason. That needs to be checked out immediately, right, by a medical professional. This is really important. All right, so we went through this. Now, when does it usually come on? All right, so cellulite usually comes on for women around puberty. So it can actually start quite early. It's 80 to 90% of all women will start to get it at some point in their life, and some men. It's a smaller fraction of men, 10%, maybe 20%. It's usually local, and it does usually increase with more body fat and less muscle as women age. It also can increase with imbalances, especially higher levels of estrogen. That's important to look at that. So really important. And then obviously when hormones fall in menopause, it can increase even further. So one thing with lipedema, you would say, well, it sounds just like cellulite. It is. Lipedema is just like cellulite, and that is why people online are just kind of giving it a new name. The difference is that there is a painful element to it, a heavy element to it. There's a real swelling and inflammation that is now moving into the danger zone. So think of cellulite as cosmetic, not ideal, but let's say normal is green, right? Green means go, like on a food sensitivity test. Yellow would be the warning. That's cellulite. Like, okay, we should do something about this. Let's work on detoxing. Let's work on hormonal balance. Let's work on strength training. Let's do all the things. Great. So now you work on that. Lipedema is going to be your orange. This is it's a red flag, but like this is a warning sign. And then lymphedema is the red flag. That is medical attention. There's asymmetry. There's a backup in the lymphatic system. There is an accumulation essentially of toxins in the body that needs to be dealt with immediately, right? So that's really important. So when you think cellulite, think cosmetic, right? CNC. When you think lipedema, think it's a fat disorder with pain and some lymph involvement. That's why it's moving towards the medical condition. And then lymphedema is the lymphatic disorder. And that is, again, true medical condition, needs to be taken care of. But it typically does progress. So just remember that it's not always cellulite to lymphedema, and lymphedema can come with an infection. But once we start to see cellulite, we should begin to work on it. When there's lipedema, there's painfulness, then it's immediate attention. Immediate attention needs to be given to it so it does not move to lymphedema. I know some of this can kind of seem confusing, but it's actually really important because when you see people on social media saying, oh, this is lipedema, it's usually cellulite. I said that on the last show, but it's usually cellulite. But that's good news. That's like, I'm here to give you the good news. That's cosmetic. Let's work on that. I've got lots of free shows on it, everything from dry brushing and rebounding and sauna and then functional medicine detail. Like you can fix it. You really can. At least 80 to 90% of it. There's no doubt about that. We've seen in our practice over and over. So the nice thing is you get your body healthy, then the cellulite begins to disappear as well. So the good news is that most people who think they have lipedema, it's most likely cellulite. Again, you should always have it treated or checked out by a medical professional if you believe that you do have lipedema. If it does feel painful, painful to the touch, if it does feel hot or swollen or heavy, have it checked out. Yes, it's an hour of your time, no doubt about it, but it's worth it, right? There's no doubt about it. So good news, most of this is cosmetic. You're being told that it's something that it's not. Then if it is progressing, now you also know, okay, let me get this checked out right away. The worst thing is I spent an hour of my time and they just told me it's cellulite. All right, no big deal. But you also then don't need to go to the clinics and wherever to have the surgery performed, which could, again, you can't go back on surgery. If you need surgery, hopefully it's a life-saving condition. If not, be careful opting for optional-based surgery. All right. Hopefully today's show was helpful. I'm going to link up previous shows, which you'll want to check out on cellulite, how to get rid of cellulite and lymphedema versus cellulite at StephenCabral.com/3540. Again, that's StephenCabral.com/3540. Have an amazing rest of the day, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything. Functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.